Yo, what is up? We have a few days left of Frostfall spoilers, and oh boy, is this an all-in kind of strategy. And I'm not a gambling man, but this card is all in. So let's go just jump right into the spoilers. Like, no need to wait. We have to start with Cryover, right? Cryolink, Cryover into Cryoscorch. Just a reminder, Cryolink can special into this if it gets to 6 attack through either its ability or Necklace Harmonia. This is kind of analogous to Sirikun Shredamoth, or, well, I guess Nimbuk Sirikun Shredamoth line, where it's now you get a 2-drop that has a draw phase trigger, so it's a 7/4 for 2 Frost. During your draw phase, you can discard your hand, at least one card, in order to special send this Cryover into Cryoscorch from your deck. Noticeably only from your deck, not your hand, so it's a little awkward if you run one of Cryoscorch. We'll get to Cryoscorch in a moment. Pretty contextualizing for Cryover. Let's just go with the draw phase trigger real quick. You will always have a card to discard for this, assuming your deck is not empty, because you always draw a card to start your turn, and then you can discard that card immediately to ascend Cryover. However, if you have multiple cards in your hand, you will discard your entire hand. Is that good? No, discarding your hand is terrible. So the payoff for ascending has to be good, so let's go just jump into Cryoscorch for the rest of the context of this card. You're dumping your hand to get out Cryoscorch. Why do you want to do that? And that's because Cryoscorch, a 14/5 for 2 Frost and 1 Fire, says when you special ascend into Cryoscorch, you must destroy all runes. So you are board wiping all the runes in play, including your own. But if your opponent has 3 or 4 back row set, you could potentially blow up their entire board by special ascending this from Cryover. So you're discarding your hand to get to Cryoscorch to blow up your opponent's back row, as well as yours, hopefully not too many cards on your own. That's pretty decent. The fact that it's symmetrical and hits your runes as well is pretty rough, but this is an all-in strategy. We are discarding our hand, blowing up all the runes, and then we are expending our spirit deck to force our opponents to expend 5. That is a ton of burn. So is this card good? That's crazy. You can do like 8 damage in a turn if you special send this, burn your opponents out with 5, you lose your entire spirit deck, but then you can also punch in for 3 perhaps. Is that worth it? I don't think so. Like, it's definitely a great finisher. However, it's a finisher that you have to set up for, so your opponent has interaction points while you're setting up for it. If you try to quick ascend it out with Cryover, great, you can destroy all runes. Your opponent can still Gorgons or PTA in response to the destroy all runes trigger. They could potentially Tsunami it so it can't attack, and then they still have a bunch of spirits. Maybe they just pop something into play with 6 attack and run over it after a Tsunami. It's super risky. Like, it is literally, you go empty-handed, 0 spirits, no runes, Cryoscorch, and hope that it wins you the game. If you try to do something cheeky like maybe Rise from the Ashes, this card at Underworld, cool. You can rise from it and burn 5 for 6 spirits. You're basically running like weird eruption combo at that point, and you have to set up for it still by getting into Underworld, so I don't think that's great. And again, you're dumping your spirit deck, and you won't get the rune destruction as well if you do the rise from thing. So I think that this card is a great finisher. However, since there's so many points of interaction leading into getting it out, I don't think it's going to be super great. I think it'll see some play just by how awesome the card is. Like, it really can just win you a game, and it's going to be, I think, a little bit of a pub stompy card where you play against a new player and they go, oh, I'm playing the game, and then all of a sudden you go Cryoscorch combo, hit you for 5, hit you for 8, or hit you for 3 more basically by attacking. So I don't think it's going to be that great, but I think it's a super cool, fun card to build around, and I'm excited to see what people come up with. Moving on. We got a ton of stuff to go through. I spent a lot of time on it. Polar Acne. A 2/5 for 2 Frost. Your opponent's Celestial gets -2 attack. You can expend Frost in order to target and destroy an Celestial with 2 or less attack. That's pretty good. This basically destroys anything with 4 attack or less, so it doesn't destroy a 5 attacker. It does block 5 attackers pretty well, and you have to remember it's a 2/5 that gives a static -2 to all opponents. So it's really a 4/7. You don't really ever want to crash this into something. But hey, it's a big wall that can destroy things proactively. Pair this with a Zeus, and you're kind of doing a build your own Earthquake with Zeus Polar Acne, so 1 Thunder, 1 Frost, destroy an Elestral, in a sense, because that's -5. That's going to get pretty much anything to be destroyed. You can get this out pretty quick with things like Tadflow, Kione, and Frostix combos to get small things into play to ascend over. Will this see play? I think if a Frost control deck is good, like Frost Thunder maybe with Platypulse, Zeus, Polaracne, etc. This could see some pretty disruptive play. However, it is not going to do a ton because you might want to attack into something, but then they could just play an Elestral the next turn or remove this with Earthquake, has no protection. So this is going to be kind of a, you play it down, try to destroy something right away, and maybe attack for a little bit of damage, or maybe you go put into play, destroy something, attack over something else, try to get tempo with it. But after the first turn it's in play, it's pretty answerable, I would think. So again, I think it's a good card. I don't know if it has a home yet, because playing Zeus, Polaracne, Frost, Quick Extend stuff might be a little clunky. We'll have to see with Elechick, you know, Elechick, Platypulse, Zeus, Polaracne. That right there is kind of a interesting little engine. But then ascending Polaracne out of, like, you can't really ascend Polaracne out of Platypulse or Elechick because of the double Frost cost. A little clunky there, but I think it'd be an interesting deck to explore, and I like the card. I think it's a good card. I just don't know where it's going right now. And moving on, Whale Lance, an 8/4 for 1 water, 1 frost. When this Whale Lance destroys an opponent's Elestral in battle, you can search that player's deck for any number of cards with the same name as that Elestral and send them to the underworld. Ampa players, so long. Foamy players, so long. You know, playing 40 foamy in your deck, goodbye all the foamy, right? Well, I make a joke there, but I do want to point out that if your opponent's playing a bunch of titled Elestrals that have the same name, this would get them all. So we have Mor Frost Terraform, right? Which we'll go over in a little bit. I believe it's the next card. And other Mor Frost in their deck, this will destroy all of them out of the deck. If you want it to, because you're searching the player's deck and you pick any number. So in theory, your opponent could leave you with 1 card as a troll or something. So if you had, in theory, a deck that's 40 different foamies, this would get rid of all of them. Is that good enough? Well, an 8/4 attack is pretty decent. At 2 cost, it has ways to get out pretty easily, being that Frost and Water have some ways to get like special casts into play pretty consistently with like Foamy, Tadpuff, Tadflow. Or Tadflow wouldn't work on this because I think Tadflow specifically says 2 Frost, but you can Enfrostic something back and then ascend over it, stuff like that. I don't know if the effects will be good now. Maybe it's a sideboard card if Mor Frost is devastating, and then maybe it's a sideboard card in the future with more titles available. You know, more, again, if there's ever a deck that's 40 Foamy, or 40 Mor Frost, or 40 Ampup, or 40 Ignectar, Whale Lance is the answer. It still has to connect, but, you know, destroy your opponent's strategy for 1 card is worth an 8/4 2-drop that you can side, assuming you're playing with Water Frost. So I think it's a cool card. I don't think it's going to see any play until we see more cards it needs to answer. But we'll see. It's a definitely interesting card. An 8 attack is pretty sizable. Tsunami immunity is also relevant. And then I just mentioned Mor Frost Terror. Awkward cropping, I apologize, but it's a 2/3 for 1 Frost. Your opponent's Elestrals get -1 attack for each Frost enchanting this Mor Frost. When a player activates a card effect that targets 1 or more Mor Frost, you can discard a Mor Frost in order to negate the effect and destroy that card. Oh boy! So you could potentially play this with Polaracne by itself. Otherwise, you're playing it to protect your Mor Frost. Now, it has an effect that wants Mor Frost on it, so you need to find ways to Nexus Frost to it to make it really terrible puns. And when a player targets a Mor Frost, you can discard a Mor Frost. So this has to be in play. Your opponent has to target a Mor Frost, and then you have to have another Mor Frost to discard. So you need to have at least 3 Mor Frosts, 1 in hand, this in play, and another in play. Or I guess I could target this as well. I don't know. That is a lot. Like, I don't think this is going to be a bad card, but you need to have board presence, cards in hand, and to play this, and it's only 2 attack. I mean, in theory, you could say it's a 3/4 with this -1 attack thing, but the stats are really low. Like, you don't really need to throw Earthquakes at this, you just attack over it. But if you get it in play with other threatening Mor Frost cards, then I guess it's good at protecting those. So your opponent kind of wants to go into battle phase to attack this, but they want to use, like, say, Earthquake on something else, but they can't because you might have cards in hand to prevent it. So I don't know. It's a lot to ask for without seeing the rest of the Mor Frost. We're going to have to come back to this when we see the rest of the Mor Frost in the set. Moving on, Corum. A 2/4 for 2 water. Gets 1 defense for each face down card in your rune row. While this Corum is in defense position, your opponents cannot set cards. Huh. So, this is a defensive body in water that, if you get it out turn 1 with a Tad Puff, is hilariously like water control, like good luck setting stuff. You have to have invokes. See you next time. I think that's really interesting. Now, there's no 3 drops of water that you want to ascend this into right now, except for what? Majesty is the only one. So you're going to have to just sit this in defense and then put stuff behind it that your opponent can't really deal with counter runes. And I don't know, this feels kind of clunky because if your opponent's already set the counter runes, well, they're already going to set the counter runes. It's a turn 1 combo thing. There's already Trident to Poseidon combo in water, so I don't know if you'd run this. It's definitely a cool card. It's super defensive, and it's definitely, if there's a control water deck that can stall out really easily, this is going to be something to pair with it, where you can set a bunch of counter runes, your opponent no longer can. They might have only 1 counter rune face down, ready to go, because they're playing around, like, I don't know, Thunderstorm. I don't know about this. I see a world where you go turn 1 Tadpuff Corum, set 2 pass, and it's just this giant wall your opponent can't touch. I also see the world where you go second and you try to set Corum, and your opponent Gorgon's Gaze is your Tadpuff and you can't even ascend into it, and then what's the point? So I don't think it's that great. I think it's super cool and interesting, but I don't think it's good enough to see play because you have to go first with it effectively. And then, I believe last but not least, Bubloon, a 1/2 for 1 water. Another, like, today's cards are very much not their true stats total. So it's a 1/2 for 1 water. Water enchanted Elestrals get 2 attack and 2 defense. So it's really a 3/4. I said that a lot this video. In reality, these stats are all different because a lot of stat buffs today. So, is Bubloon good? I don't know. I see a world where you go like Foamy turn 1, Foamy dies, search Bubloon, play Bubloon from hand, and now you have 2 giant Bubloons, and then maybe you find a way to get a 3rd one out, and then all of a sudden you have a bunch of like 7 attackers, Bubloons. However, finding 3 Bubloons is gonna not really happen super often unless you're playing Peliquarius, but no one really plays Peliquarius, so you're not gonna search Bubloons. I don't know. I could see this being like a 1 or 2 of card with like Foamy, where your opponent's going to have to be basically proactively destroying things before they destroy Foamy, because otherwise you get Bubloon out and then boost all your things' defenses. It's interesting if you have a Galaxy in play that your opponent didn't answer, you can play this behind it. Now all of a sudden it's a 7 attack Galaxy, and this would be a 4 attack Bubloon. So I see interesting things you can do with Bubloon. I think it's going to be a fun little support tech card. I don't know if it's going to be good enough to see multiples in a deck, because there's so many other good options to select for water where it's interesting. Now, what other water aggressive bodies do you pair this with besides Galaxy? Nothing. Like, and then your opponent just attacks over this anyway, and if they attack over this, they could probably then not have to deal with whatever this is buffing as well. Like, if you play like something with 6 attack, you attack over this, well, Galaxy's not getting over that, or Galaxy's gonna have to crash into whatever you played. So I don't know. I think it's a really fun card. I think it's definitely worth building around. I could see a world where maybe you do like a Caprigal Rise from the Depths Atlantis thing with this, because this plus Atlantis goes really hard. So I think you're really trying to do a Rise from the Depths situation with Bubloon, where you can always just special cast it back. However, finding the Bubloons is the issue with the card. You have to basically, if you're trying to go super wide on Bubloon, you gotta find Bubloon. If you're trying to do Stadium Bubloon stuff, that's a lot of cards to equal a combo just to get Bubloon to what? 4 attack, 5 attack, like, I don't know. It's a cool card. I will definitely think it'll see play. I just don't think it's going to be super great or consistent, but we'll go get there when we get there. Yeah, so that's about it for today. Frostfall is definitely shaking up to be interesting. Again, these cards are a lot of cards that manipulate stats, which is kind of a fun, interesting little sub-theme today. And we still have to see a bunch of Mor Frost cards. There are still a few cards that are not teased at all yet. We still have to see what Cockatoodle from the lore video. stuff I can't talk about, which is going to be super interesting. Lava, whatever lava is going to be interesting. But yeah, still a lot of interesting stuff to show up coming Frostfall. And I will unfortunately probably see you guys in a week because I'm on vacation, and I'll talk about it in like a week and a half. And we'll go over the whole set. So see you guys when we have the whole set again, and have a good one.